The one true love of many Dragon Ball fans, the title Hungry for Ambition, Spike's bet to reach the hearts of many players again, a bittersweet drink. Raging Blast did what it had to do for different types of players, but it wasn't what the franchise needed. Join me to see what awaits us with this pretty special Dragon Ball game. I would be lying if I said that this game was not requested in the comments, so let's jump right in. If we reach 50 likes, I will bring the review of Raging Blast 2 next week, so let's crush that like button. Many consider this game to be the spiritual sequel to the acclaimed Budokai Tenkaichi saga on PlayStation 2, but it is not even so. Raging Blast has a part on its backward cover that specifies that this would be the new beginning of the era of the Budokai Tenkaichi. New graphic engines will be used, but with formats and characters models very familiar to those seen in Tenkaichi. Let's see if it was able to stand up. The story mode is a little more organized than I remember, divided in arcs again, but with a peculiar style showing fragments of the story in the form of figures that were truly interesting. As is usual, many times the story begins including such ephemeral fights in the series, but here they make them look like a prolonged battle, like when Raditz hits Krillin with his tail, and already, with only those few seconds, we got a fight. That is good, but I'm surprised that it has been one of the only occasions that they remain so specific in the transitions of important fights in each saga, without they being to simplify every time more. Despite that, you can still get to see requested fights like the training of the Sea Warriors before the arrival of the Saiyans, thing that had already been implemented in games like the first Budokai Tenkaichi, a way to prolong the events of the story without offering anything special other than an additional combat, because new resources are not being used. There are no new progression mechanics or unique combat events. No, these are the old dialogues with the old fights that have worked in the past. Here they feel like an absent ingredient, called innovation. Developed by Spike, this game comes as one with experience in the Dragon Ball games area. In theory, they only had to repeat that successful formula that they had on PS2, now in the new generation of consoles, but would that be enough? The cinematics continue to use the same body gestures as in games from past generations. That didn't lift me up much, but at least in the gesture part of the faces, they added new elements like a more credible movement of the mouth, expressions of concern, pain, drops of sweat, and others. So far, so good. They made this game a little different from what was the graphic quality of the Tenkaichi. Of course, real kinematics were included in every sense of the word, where not only predetermined movements were used but unique animations similar to what existed in Budokai Tenkaichi 2. It was an important advance. This style is more attached to a combat system where the key attacks are given more presence, and the spectacularity of the techniques was already seen more present in Spike titles previously, but here I feel that they taken it too far. I know that one of the main objectives of the game is not to make elaborated melee combos and others, but here the hand-to-hand combat is very poor in my opinion. There are a lot of hitbox fails in the basic combo animations of each character. Sometimes you stay right with your attacks, others your rival may escape out of nowhere, among other little details. You cannot do too many extensions with the combos. It gives the feeling that you just begin playing for the first time. The melee experience is super neglected. Even though it is noted that they wanted it to be the most polished section, it doesn't feel like a technical advance except for some specific techniques. The improvable execution of several of these special techniques leave that section of spectacularity that they wanted so much to preserve. Talking specifically about crucial moments in the story like the deaths of some warriors, ultimate attacks and transformations, here with Vegeta, he is giving his life for his loved ones, sacrificing themselves to end the threat that seems unstoppable, fading out in a suicidal explosion. This is supposed to make me feel emotional, pity, but man, make an effort for me to believe it and don't leave this Vegeta fragment alone falling to the ground. The amplitude of the scenarios felt much better, giving more freedom of movement, and it would have been one of the strongest sections of the game if it was not for the problems with the camera. Many remember this Dragon Ball game not in the best way, and it was due to a problem it had with one of the sections with which the player has more direct contact, and that is the camera perspective. Commonly in this type of games, it is usual that a camera problem occurs when the character we control is too close to a surface, such as a wall or an object that obstructs the vision, and for that reason they may feel a little uncomfortable. But here that is not even necessary. If your opponent takes more hate than you begin to see how the camera had many problems to fix the target correctly. The combos could not be appreciated well. Sometimes the techniques that were executed too close were super simple due to the lack of attention to detail in particles and explosions. It's a pity because many of the special attacks implemented in Raging Blast are worth seeing and appreciating them without any distraction. There are very cool details, but they get lost in many times in this uncomfortable viewing angle. I enjoy the game, I love playing it, seriously, you can have a very good time. I like it, I swear, it's just that I wanted to highlight some things which in my opinion could be a little better. We see once again the beam struggles and the attack with something different and more polished animations, but with the same essence. Besides, a new mechanic was implemented, such as the throws that leave you stuck to a surface for a short period of time, and your rival could deal even more damage. Quite seen element in Dragon Ball fighting, if we start to think, and it is pleasant to see it implemented here. I like how in each combat of a particular character, depending on the point of the story we are, their skills vary. For example, Goku has 3 different rush attacks, one which would be the meteor combination in the Raditz Saga, which makes sense being the same attack that is used against Piccolo in the martial arts tournament, the normal Kaioken attack that he uses against Nappa, and the triple Kaioken attack that he uses against Vegeta. This kind of thing was not taken into account in games a few years ago, so I honestly enjoyed it. This game takes very seriously the concept of letting us use various characters throughout the entire story mode, including the villains. All this in order to make the number of new elements that we see through it more diverse. I have commented on this on a couple of occasions, but it doesn't bother me having to use a bad guy in a story mode. On the opposite, I think it's a good resource to give us different perspectives and, as in this case, give more diversity of gameplay and not get bored using the same 3 or 4 characters throughout the whole story. The HUD of the fights is different to how it was seen in the Budokai Tenkaichi, with a spherical view that indicates the level of health and ki, but it's only a matter of time to feel comfortable again once you get used to it. There are some details I may miss out, but believe me, I'm doing it on purpose, since these elements were already implemented in the past or are already so common in this type of games that they can't even be considered as standard. That's why things like the inclusion of Bardock's mini saga or how special attacks have a hit confirm to start a special animation are things that, although were included as something different and refreshing for the Tenkaichi legacy, I don't consider they represent a change which should be talked about in depth. It is curious that the game is very attached to the what if, maybe even more than any other Dragon Ball title. The possibility of playing alternative battles here is taken to another level. A combat was even added where Vegeta in Super Saiyan 3 faces Broly Super Saiyan 3, and you may get to think you are watching some fanfic or something like that. That's why it's pretty fun. The roster of characters in this sense is smaller than the Tenkaichi, yes, but the variety is by no little. All the most important characters are here, along with the respective transformations and fusions. A total of 42 characters. Raging Blast, the next generation Budokai Tenkaichi with a great responsibility on his shoulders, delivering a very decent experience to be one of the first on the platform and without departure too much from what made the guys in Spike ever great. It's not my favorite, I'm not going to lie, but it is an extremely entertaining game with tons of content, both canon and sometimes wonderful. The response was largely acceptable by consumers and a sequel began development, so let's break that like button to bring the good Raging Blast 2 review. Let me know, what was your first Xbox 360 or PS3 game? Mine was Mortal Kombat 9. Actually, it took me a few years to get the Xbox 360. Guys, thank you so much for watching, that was all for today, take care and see ya.